Thank you, Emily. That was beautiful. I want to start with a quote from Alex that actually dovetails very nicely with Emily's song, and this wasn't planned, but to love fearlessly and fiercely is to love, struggle with, and fight for someone, despite that the person will probably suffer and hurt, despite that I will probably suffer and hurt. Tom Bratter didn't warn me of the occupational hazards that come with this job. The risk we take when we dare to care, when we dare to invest, when we dare to love these students as if they are our own children. And I should have heeded the warning 5 years ago when Gabs Meerbergen died. It was my first week on the job, and I didn't understand what my role was to be back then, as I watched a community mourn. But I never imagined that I'd have this role today. I'd never imagined I'd have the painful conversations I have had with Liz and with Scott and with this community. But here I am, and here we all are today to remember and to celebrate Alex's life. And it's a great privilege and it's a great heartache for me to share my perspective of his stay at Dewey. Alex came to Dewey on May 14th, 2009. Before I ever met him, I knew from his mother that he was misunderstood. That was the word that always stood out to me. Alex was reportedly brilliant and outrageously creative, and as some have already mentioned, an out-of-the-box kind of kid, just the kind I loved getting to know. Smart, sensitive, lost, and misunderstood. Alex came to Dewey, and he played the "I'm so misunderstood" game over and over again. He talked, lived, and played in the ozone layer, and then wondered why no one understood him. He was irresponsible, forgetful, and immature. He wore shoes wrapped in duct tape and scaled the castle wall. And he had the strange ability to leap high into the air like a billy goat, onto and over all sorts of things, including his mother, or so I've heard. And Alex, he dressed kind of funny on purpose, and he had a mischievous grin that could sometimes be interpreted as a taunt, a challenge to see if you could really figure out what was going on inside. He lived his life on an island of his own creation. He was disconnected from the community. He remained misunderstood. About a year into his stay, after months and months of self-sabotage, I had the privilege and challenge of becoming his primary. It wasn't his choice. He didn't trust me, and I didn't take it personally. He didn't trust most people then. And plus, I was a woman. The qualities he perceived in me, kindness, gentleness, sensitivity, femininity, he equated with vulnerability and weakness, the qualities he later admitted being so insecure about. He challenged and questioned me in those early days of our relationship. He was direct and honest with me. Alex tested me, and I welcomed it. It was refreshing. I knew it would take time. But even after a few months of working together, even after the sudden death of his second mom, Debbie, even after all that I tried to make him feel safe with me, to feel understood, I felt him holding back. As most of you know, Alex was expelled during his first senior retreat, fall of 2010. At that point, he had been here for about a year and a half. He had still not made that fundamental shift crucial to any successful Dewey stay. The group tried desperately to help. His parents tried desperately to help. Tom Bratter yelled in true Tom fashion, and then it was all over. He was no longer a Dewey student, much less a senior. And it was at that moment, I believe, that everything began to change. Alex finally, maybe, began to understand that his life, his future, his ability to be understood was completely within his control. And it was his, and only his, responsibility. And eventually, Alex came to me ready to do the hard therapeutic work. And it was really, really hard. We referred to it as cleaning out the closet. And it was a humbling experience for me to go through that process with him. To cry with him. To feel the fear and the pain and the shame and the guilt with him. To guide him and to understand him. And then later I watched him step out onto a new path, tentatively at first, and then later with great boldness. I watched and smiled as he began building a new life for himself here. New beginnings with his parents, his friendships with Emily, with Johnny, his caring for so many people in this community, Jacob, Chris, Eli, AJ, Kibo, Sophie, Razi, the list goes on and on. I'm sorry if I forgot anyone's name there. And it seemed that other people began to understand him. Alex worked hard the following year, but he was far from finished. At his second senior retreat last fall, I worried that he could still be distant and overly intellectual when he confronted others. He struggled with maintaining that right balance of independence and freedom that he craved so much, and connection and caring. He wanted so much to understand and experience a perfect, or perhaps near perfect, form of love. The kind of love given without any expectation of anything in return. The kind of love in which one experiences both safety and freedom. In his last months at Dewey, this is what I recall him grappling with the most. This yearning to know what it is to truly love and to be loved, to understand and to be understood, to live in relationship, no longer on an island. In his final months at Dewey, I believe Alex experienced a pivotal shift in relation to this community that cared about him. It didn't happen in one single moment, but one single moment stands out to me. During closed house, Alex silenced the entire dining room with his weeping over hurt and betrayal in an important relationship. And I saw in that moment that he had found a way to transform his tenderness, fragility, and vulnerability into incredible strength, powerful enough to penetrate even the most walled-off hearts in that room. And in that moment, when he was that open to us, the feelings of love, empathy, of being understood were palpable and real. We were touched by him, and he allowed us to get close, closer than I had ever seen him do before. Tom wasn't there that day, but I knew that Tom would have nodded in approval, because this is the beauty of Dewey. I believe Alex was a teacher at heart, and I know that I'm not alone in saying that Alex taught me a great deal. I think he taught us all a lot, particularly in the way he left Dewey and the way he was living his life. In going through my files, I found his guru request, which I've asked Razi to come read, because I think it sums up his later Dewey experiences so beautifully.
So my name's Razi. Dear staff meeting, I would like to be considered for the position of guru. I struggled with this decision for some time because I have not seen a guru in my stay and had cultivated a certain mistrust for the title. Note, in italics, had cultivated. My mistrust was grounded in a fear of egotism because the word guru is a very powerful one. Teaching is no trivial task, nor is it trivial to call oneself a teacher. I was afraid of what it might say about me to assume such a title. Arrogant, unaware, egotistical. I have since developed new thoughts on the matter. A guru is someone who understands and cares. I have had a knack for seeing through people since I was very young. But as I grew up, this knack fed a harsh and judgmental side of me. I read people on a level that kept me from teasing them because I couldn't do it without really hurting them, so I didn't. At Dewey, I have had similar struggles. I judged people for their faults silently, and thereby kept myself distant from their pain. I turned this knack for understanding into a tool to keep myself alone. Truly a waste. Change in this area has come slowly and in various stages. As I have gained greater respect for myself, greater confidence in the person I have become and am becoming, I have found the courage to love people fiercely and fearlessly. Last week, Razi screamed for help. When I felt his solitude and his suffering, I cried. Never before have I cried in a help group, much less for the suffering of my ideological nemesis. I have seen and understood Razi for many months. I was among those pushing him to look deep. I escalated his groups because I wanted him to see himself and to change. That he was and is an intimidating leader did not hold me back. I have to admit, though, that I confronted him not out of love for him, but out of love for this place. I thought his behavior was damaging the fabric of this community by scaring and hurting people inappropriately and making it harder for them to trust this place. Despite the fact that I saw him lashing out from his own pain, my goal was to protect the community, and in that I believe I succeeded. As noted, my care for Razi was still wispy. Honestly, even at the beginning of his help group, I was prepared to give up. I spoke my mind anyway and called him out and pushed the issue. Thus, the group gained momentum. When I felt the time was right, when I felt that he would really hear me, I told him he was a coward. And I did it with compassion. Twice I have truly connected with Razi. Once in that group, and once in the all-day group some months ago. In both I have felt the pain of his ghosts because I understand them. I know them and have wrestled with them myself. Such is the position of guru. To love fiercely and fearlessly is to love, struggle with, and fight for someone, despite that the person will probably suffer and hurt, despite that I will probably suffer and hurt. Suffering and hurt are integral to what we do here, and in the rest of life, for we must see our weakest, most pathetic sides, to feel that shame before we can undertake the monumental task of demolition and renovation. We must expose our most vulnerable selves to give gravity to life and struggle. I spent some time here in a mode where I saw deep into people and forgave them, but had not yet overcome this insecurity and discomfort of saying the productive, hurtful truth. I was still afraid to expose myself to that degree of investment in others. I have learned to take the risk, make the investment, and, this goes out to Christian and Ken, go back into the cave to suffer again with those that need someone to help and to suffer with them. Because my process was so long, so painful, and so difficult, I felt that I couldn't go back and do it again. I saw the mouth of the cave, and I hesitated. Now, I am ready. Thank you for your consideration. Wesley MacCready.
I thank God for bringing Alex into my life, into our lives, into this community, for blessing us all with his quirkiness, sensitivity, perceptiveness, his big, beautiful heart, and that wonderful sparkle in his eyes when he smiled. My life has been forever changed because of who Alex was, not because of his death, but because of the life he ultimately chose to live. He chose to love fiercely and fearlessly. I admire and respect him for that. And I'm so grateful that when I think of him spending his last days on an island, I can smile knowing that he felt loved and truly understood.